Hi, everyone, and welcome to this edition of CI Live. I'm Pujaa, a research analyst on the agriculture team here at S&P Global, specifically working under the crops team.
And I'm Vladimir, an agricultural analyst leading the APAC research team, focusing on the Asian grains, oilseed, and vegetable oil markets. Today, we're diving into a part of the lauric oil story that doesn't always get the spotlight, but probably should.
We're talking about oleochemicals, and more importantly, how this sector is quietly but significantly shaping demand for coconut and palm kernel oil.
Let's start with the basics. When we say lauric oils, we're mostly talking about coconut oil and palm kernel oil, right?
Exactly. Both are rich in lauric acid, and while they do go into food, a surprisingly large share, especially palm kernel oil, is used for industrial purposes. Palm kernel oil and coconut oil are essentially used as feedstocks that are turned into four main products. You've got fatty acids, fatty alcohols, glycerol, and FAME. And that is where oleochemicals come in.
Right. And these are used in everyday items like soap, detergents, toothpaste, cosmetics, that sort of thing.
Yes, so think fatty acids, fatty alcohols, glycerols. They're essentially core ingredients that go into so many consumer and industrial goods. And what's really interesting here is how demand for these products are really driving lauric oil consumption.
So oleochemicals aren't just a niche, they are a core demand driver.
Absolutely. And that's why it's really critical that anyone tracking lauric oils, not just from a supply perspective, but they also start paying attention to what's happening in the oleochemical space.
All right, let's talk about price dynamics.
Mhm.
I know you recently did some research around how lauric oil prices move downstream into oleochemicals. What stood out to you?
So, first of all, fatty acids have the strongest link to lauric oil prices. So, when palm kernel oil prices really move, you see that, following immediately into fatty acids almost immediately. The price transmission here is incredibly tight
Why is that?
because they're a direct output of hydrolyzing the oil. And then you have things like fatty alcohols, and they're also very sensitive, but they have a little bit more of a lag, around 1 to 2 months. And this is because of the additional processing and also some flexibility in feedstocks.
Right. And what about glycerol and fame?
They show a little bit more of a weaker causality. So glycerol is actually a byproduct. So its pricing depends more on the overall biodiesel production. You've got FAME or biodiesel, which is even more complex. It uses a mix of feedstocks and is also very heavily policy driven.
So it sounds like fatty acids and fatty alcohols are the early signals when trying to understand the demand pull from oleochemicals. Did I get that right?
Spot on. And here's the thing. Most oleochemical producers are actually price takers. They're dealing with tight inventories, volatile contracts, and also have very little buffer. So shifts in PKO prices hit them fast.
And what about the trade angle? Who's buying all of these oleochemicals?
Indonesia is the world's largest exporter, particularly of fatty acids and alcohols. On the other hand, you've got China, which is the biggest buyer. They use these chemicals to manufacture finished consumer products like cosmetics and also detergents and so much more.
Right. You'd assume Europe or the USA, with their large consumer bases, would be the main destinations.
Well, yeah, Europe is big too, especially in hubs like Rotterdam, which are often re-exported actually within the EU. But nowadays, you're really seeing trade flows really shifting post-COVID, where more production is really staying within Southeast Asia to meet rising domestic demand. And this is really driven by biodiesel mandates in countries like Indonesia, where they have their B40.
Right? So oleochemical trade is not just about global demand. It is also shaped by local policy, price shocks, and logistics.
Exactly. So the takeaway is, if you're in the Loricol space, tracking end-use shifts and regional mandates can really offer serious insight into future demand trends.
So, what is the bottom line?
If you care about where loricols are going, don't just look at food demand. Oleochemicals are the growth engine, and tracking price sensitivity across the chain gives you a sharper lens on what's really driving the market.
That's great. Thanks a lot for breaking this down, Pooja. So, if you're someone that is interested in the long-term outlook for lauric oils, you're saying they have to look into the oleochemical industry.
Exactly, because that is where the future of industrial demand lies. Thank you, Vlad, and thank you everyone for watching.